My name is Luana Kendoli, and I worked at Walter Reed from 1980 to 2012. Um, 2011, I left the old Walter Reed, which is a DC, and went to the new Walter Reed in Bethesda. I was a medical technologist in a medical division here at Walter Reed. And when I left, I opened a new Walter Reed with as a chief med tech of nephrology. I worked first at this Walter Reed, the old Walter Reed, which is in DC. I worked in chemistry and hematology section. I was originally hired to go into microbiology, but that was reserved for certain individuals. When I was not hired there, they sent me to chemistry and to hematology, where I spent most of my time.
Thank you. I'm Akbar Sharrieff. I worked at Walter Reed from '68, I believe it was, until 1996. Medical technologist, also in the laboratory as a technologist. Should I say urinalysis? Yeah, urinalysis.
Yeah. You chief.
Yeah, I was chief urinalyst, if you will. We had a temporary building while building 2 was being built, and I think it was '70, we moved over to building 2.
I came in 1980, so I came directly to building 2. But I also worked at AFIP doing research, and at RARE doing research with some of the fellows that I work for and with. I taught second-year fellows, GME program, and we did research protocols through clinical investigations and with AFIP and RARE.
And AFIP stands for?
Army Air, Army, wait now, Armed Forces Institute of Pathology. Yes.
Okay, and that was on?
Yes, it's on the campus, and where it was Walter Reed Army Institute of Research.
Yeah.
Yeah. I left State Department and World Bank prior to coming here in the VA hospital, and my specialty was tropical diseases. I had done a lot of work with in parasitology at both of those places, and had also opened a lab on the K Street called Parasitology Lab of Washington. So one of the openings was in parasitology, and I had been hired initially for microbiology, which covered parasitology, but microbiology had what I call clones. Everyone looked exactly like a young 5'6", 120 pounds, Caucasian female, no males at all. Maybe there was one male and a person of color, and the person of color was the person who did all the decontamination of all the petri dishes that we had. So
dishwasher, basically.
Basically dishwasher, and all the dangerous petri dishes had to be autoclaved. So anything that was found during the process of taking care of a patient was eventually put into a bucket or a basket where it had to be decontaminated, so it had to be autoclaved. So they had one man who did that, and he was African American.
And what did they tell you that when you couldn't be hired there, or you weren't hired there?
Well, they said they didn't have that opening. The man who was going to retire wasn't going to retire at the time, and so they sent me to the hematology. But I did have a little bit of a revenge, so to speak. One of my best friends is a Caucasian female who was excellent in mycology and also parasitology. We had worked together at State Department. So I told her about the job, and she got the job. Yeah, I mean, it was obvious why I didn't get the job, but you know, it was also good that my good friend got it.
Yeah.
Well, yes, UBAD is United Blacks Against Discrimination, UBAD. And it was born in my living room, so to speak, along with Nell Pendleton, who was the head of UBAD. We realized that there was something that needed to be done as far as discrimination discrimination at Walter Reed, and we made it happen. We we demonstrated. We organized the workers in the laundry. They were I mean, unusual conditions, and they were meant to work. You know, they were supposed to work. You know, under these conditions, and it was. I mean, it was horrible. It was horrible.
How did you, before meeting at your house, how did you, spread the word or
It was mostly
organize,
it was mostly word of mouth, and of course, whenever there was an article that came out in the Stripe about demonstrators, which we were, that's how the word spread. Yeah.
But somebody, who was the first to, was it the laundry workers who complained and organized a
Laundry workers
demonstration?
and the cafeteria workers, you know, they had deplorable conditions. We went to the laundry, and it was so hot. It was unbelievable. What the people were supposed to do it was really unbelievable, you know. Inhuman, I should say.
And what about the food?
Food, basically the same thing. I mean, they were really forced to work unusual hours under duress, you know, under a lot of pressure.
Were all of the laundry and food workers African American?
Yes, all of them were.
And were they upset about their pay also?
Yes. I mean, they were hired for one job and did several other jobs, you know. So we investigated, and we investigated, and we demonstrated.
So who came to the meetings at your house?
There were about 10 of us. Nell Pendleton, of course, and
she was what was
she was a chemist, I believe, at Rare, and
Rare?
at Rare, WARI, Walter Reed. Walter Reed Institute of Research.
Okay.
That's what RAIR stands for. WRAIR, yeah. So we gathered at my house and formulated what we planned to do, and we made. We were told we were going to walk on the general's house. This house.
This very house.
This very house. And he refused to meet with us. Then in one of the demonstrations we had, where Walter Fauntleroy, who was the representative, came to talk to the general, and he was made to wait hours before they talked to him. Well, I think Nell was a worker at the credit union, I believe, and she uncovered some stuff that wasn't going right. So with the credit union, the employees, I mean, it was pathetic. The employees were given loans based on their salaries, and they were supposed to give back a certain amount, you know. I mean, like I say, it was deplorable and discriminatory.
What were some of the other areas that were, of concern to UBAD?
Well, like I said, I worked in the laboratory, pathology laboratory, and one of the conditions in the laboratory, as far as blacks were concerned, was not the best. Also,
How did?
well, we got the lowest jobs. We had to do the dirtiest work.
And actually, you might,
Go ahead.
Actually, I came after you bad, but I did work in the lab, and then when I worked in the lab, that first incident that I told you about was pretty much prevalent in the entire lab. For the medical technologists, the best places and the most prestigious places to work would be microbiology, chemistry, and then you go from there to hematology. and then urinalysis or something like that. And that's because the heaviest workload is in hematology and coagulation, urinalysis, because everyone who comes in the hospital gets a CBC, a serology, and a UA. And then the next area would be chemistry, but that's mechanized, so you don't it's not as tedious work. And the stat level, the level of the time frame turnaround time is not as critical sometimes for chemistry because you have a machine that's doing it, and you don't have auxiliary things that you have to do when you have a CBC done. That's one thing. So then if you're working in hematology or urinalysis or chemistry, you're going to work harder. You're going to have a lot more work to do, and it's a lot more tedious. And of course, the pay scale was based upon the areas that were the most desired, which is microbiology, chemistry, and on down the line. Yeah. And even when there was again, I wasn't with UBAD, but I came after UBAD, and I still saw some of the same discriminatory processes. When there was supposedly a change being made where everyone was going to get a promotion, you remember that with where they were going to give promotions based upon your skill level, and everyone was going to be graded at the same on the same scale, so to speak. Even though you may not have worked in microbiology or something like that, they were going to give grades. There were upgrades. What happened? What was the supervisor's name? Little short white lady. Can't remember her. Nan. I can't remember her full name, but she was the person who was supposed to determine who was going to get GS9s. Now this was just a GS9, and the GS9s went to individuals primarily who were not in hematology. And of course, hematology was primarily people of color. So we saw that was a practice. And although, again, UBAD, I think, had kind of, when I came, it had kind of died out, so to speak. But there still were people who protested using the institutional SOP books and so forth for protests, and EEO and just MER, but of course MER is for MER, it's for the administration.
What is, to pick up on that?
Okay.
What were some? These are loans for like home loans, or
any kind of loan that the credit union was able to make, there were illegal practices going on at the time. So some of them, I mean, I didn't even know. I mean, I even tried to make a loan from the credit union, a very small loan, and well, it went well with me, I think, you know, but many people who wanted loans, like I said, there was a lot of criminal activity.
Well, you don't even know if they charged you a
That-
higher
that's
interest
right,
rate
that's right.
or worse terms.
Right.
Because you wouldn't exactly be able to ask those
Exactly.
people. I mean, is the Army or the military not subject to U.S. laws? Because I think by this time,
Which credit union was it?
Right here on post.
PenFed?
Yeah, FinFed.
PenFed,
Well, I can tell you a story about that after you
Well,
finish.
Okay. All right.
but they're subject to U.S. law, right? All of these,
We think so.
But ma'am, it's not unique to have any financial institution in the United States, and especially in this area where people of color are not penalized for being a person of color.
well, I know, right, that's true,
And,
but
and even with the credit union, I can give one example of PenFed, where I bought a car and they were taking my debiting my account for the payments, and they missed a payment, debiting a payment from my account, and charged me for being late for the payment. And I protested, and once I protested, they constantly then monitored everything that I did, and wouldn't give me a credit card based on that one incident. So
which was their fault.
which was their fault. So it didn't change much in the 80s. I came in the 80s, so it was still a common practice there. I still have PenFed as a credit union, but I don't really use them.
But there was this went to hearings, and Nell Pendleton filed a
Well,
claim or lawsuit,
Yeah.
and some change should have taken place, right?
There was some changes, but they were minuscule. they were
Really?
so small. I mean, there were some changes.
Did conditions improve for the blue collar?
Somewhat, but not very much. I mean, they improved a little bit.
Did they strike or just demonstrate?
They were threatened if they strike, they would probably lose their job. But being a government employee, you don't lose your job from the government. You just can't be fired from the government, so to speak.
You don't lose your job as a government employee. However, there are administrative ways of making you leave your job or putting pressure on you so that you either leave it or you become so stressed that you end up making mistakes or something, and then you are forced to leave. And I can give an example of that at the new Walter Reed, but not now, since he's talking about that.
Well, why don't you give the example since you're,
Okay.
before we forget.
When we left this Walter Reed, we had about a 2-year period where we were transitioning from here to the new, and we were all asked to design our areas that we were working in and set it up, and there was not supposed to be any ways of overspending. They told you to buy what you wanted, and you would get it on the other side. So we set that up on that side. When we arrived from here to the new Walter Reed, I firmly believe that they were surprised at the competency of the individuals who came from this Walter Reed to the new Walter Reed, not only from housekeeping, but cafeteria workers, the regular employees and the military employees. And I can say definitely with some of the doctors, because we had a program where they were training on this side. They came from Navy to here for training, and our doctors went to the new Walter B. prior from the transition. And the difference in the workload from Army based upon the number of patients was like maybe 2 or 3 times the level of the ones that they had at Navy. And the Navy doctors felt that they were being overworked when they came here, and our doctors felt that they were having a vacation when they went there. So that mentality was exhibited when we went to the new Walter Reed, because you could eat off the floors at the, not literally, at the old Walter Reed, but the floors over there were really filthy. The cafeteria was not organized as well as our cafeteria at the old Walter Reed, at the new Walter Reed. They didn't have the number of dishes, and the dishes were done. They were just done. And no, I'm serious. I'm very serious about this. And if you had a corpsman who was working with you, which is Navy, and you asked him to get you 4 boxes of whatever supplies you needed, they had to go to the next level up, and sometimes up to the lieutenant commander, before they could make a decision about getting what you needed. So you were constantly without some of the supplies that you needed. If you ask a private to get you something, he had better get it for you before the week or the day. If you needed it in that day, he would go all over the place to find that item for you, which is the difference in the work ethic. And when I think they found out how many people came from the old Walter Reed to the new Walter Reed, they started what you might call cleansing. And
Riffing people?
oh, ma'am, what they did was, first they looked at age, then they looked at civil service retirement system, and then they looked at color, or all combined at the same time. And you found that they started with housekeeping, and then with cafeteria, and then anybody else. And when it came to age and civil service retirement, it was everybody. It wasn't just a person of people of color, but they predominantly it was people of color. So that took place, and they used everything they could possibly use. For example, if that gentleman was was not your supervisor and did not know how to do lab, they would make him supervise. He could be a nurse. He could be your supervisor. This happened. Could be your supervisor and did not know what to do or speak, but have you doing work at the old Walter Reed while he was at the new Walter Reed, and then you ended up being not in the place where you were supposed to be doing the teaching, because you were over at this Walter Reed doing. So they found ways of compromising your ability to meet your objectives of your job. And so then they started writing you up, and then you protested that. They did not have an EEO facility, anybody on campus over there. That person was in Virginia, so they didn't have that. And you couldn't really protest. And you saw people being pressured pretty much into leaving, because they saw that you were being written up once, then you rebutted that, and the next thing is a reprimand, and you rebutted that. Then the next thing is another reprimand, you rebutted that. Then you got a suspension, a notice that if you don't do this or you don't do that, you can be suspended. So then what do? You decide to leave. if you were able to check the number of people who left here and went to the new Walter Reed, and how rapidly they downsized that area, you would be surprised. Plus, the amount of money that was spent from the transition for equipment was astronomical, and a lot of it was waste. But you couldn't speak about that because you were new to new Walter Reed. But there are just a lot of little things that happen that would make you decide to leave. Yeah.
What kind of how many demonstrations maybe were you involved in, and where were they?
All of the demonstrations were here on post.
And like in front of what building?
This building, first of all, and then at building 2. There was when Walter Fauntleroy was closed out, so to speak, for speaking to the general, everybody just sort of went on the lawn and just sat there.
Waiting.
Just waiting, yes.
And how many people would be demonstrating?
Oh, nearly everybody at Walter Reed. Nearly everybody at Walter. A lot of
everybody people. White and black?
White and black, yes.
So like hundreds?
I would think hundreds, yes.
And how long would this be? Like a couple hours, or?
Yes, just about a couple hours, yeah.
And how many times did this happen?
Well, I think, if I remember correctly, there were about 8 or 9 that I know of that I personally participated in. About 8 or 9, I guess.
This is before, listservs, did you put out flyers?
Word of mouth traveled very fast around Walter Reed.
Were you allowed to put up flyers? And
No, we were not allowed to put up any flyers.
What about, you
had a newsletter.
Yes.
You had a newsletter.
We had a newsletter.
Was it mailed or?
It was handed out, and we still, to this day, I still to this day don't know how it was printed, but because there were investigations from higher ups wanted to find out where the paper was, where it came from, how it came about. In fact, I did the masthead for the UBAD newsletter.
So they would, if it had been printed on base, somebody would have gotten in trouble for using the equipment or whatever.
Yes. I think, like I said, I still don't know today how it was put together. I just know that I did the masthead for the newsletter, and that's the last I saw of it.
Do you have any copies?
I have just one copy.
One. And how many newsletters were there? Was it every month or just?
Yes.
For like 5 years or?
Roughly about, yes.
Yeah, because I think it was like 74 to 79. UBAD was active,
exactly.
Something like that.
Exactly. Do you have the?
What?
Oh, no, I was talking to Virginia.
So who wrote articles, or is that a mystery?
Many people contributed, but there were no bylines.
That's not.
There were no bylines.
And the masthead didn't have any names, I assume.
No, it just had UBAD right across the top there.
So it was underground,
so to speak. Yeah.
And did you have once you stopped meeting at your house, where did you meet?
Wherever we could. We would, like a lot of times, we would meet in the laundry.
Not too many people at once, though.
No, not too many people at once, no. Because first of all, it was too hot. But we would meet in the laundry, and with the cafeteria workers, we would find a place to meet.
To have lunch together.
Yes.
And this would have to be on your lunch hour or break or after work, right?
Yes, mostly at lunchtime.
Were there people like spies, or were there,
Probably were. Probably were, because we were surprisingly, a lot of the stuff that we talked about got back to the general, so I would imagine there were some spies.
so they knew who you all were?
Yes, yes.
And did you notice harassment and things, since the general knew who you were? Or other repercussions that...
There were very subtle ways of making making it hard for us, but we survived.
Yeah, what were some of the ways?
Well, Luana alluded to it, so to speak. They would find something else for you to do, and if you weren't able to do it, you were written up. And if you were written up, of course, if the number of times you were written up would mean you're forced to make other arrangements.
Make other arrangements for a job, you mean?
Yes, right. That's right. Yes.
Gentle coercion.
Coercion. Yeah.
And not so gentle, but...
No,
yeah,
it's
that's
not very gentle. Well, did you feel like, empowered and excited, or what were the feelings among the people who were organizing that...
Whenever there was a slight victory, whenever there was a slight victory, we enjoyed it.
Tell me about some of the victories.
When they found out that they could lower the temperature somehow in the laundry, they did. Some of the jobs that the people had were dispersed in such a way that it would lighten the load on some people, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough.
Was anybody forced out of their job, or forced to fired or whatever?
No, all of that was very subtle. Whatever it was, whatever happened, it was all very subtle.
Well, did anyone leave their job and you suspected it was?
We didn't know.
You didn't know?
No.
I don't know. All I know is before I came, they told me don't come to Walter Reed because of you bad. I'm very serious.
Yeah,
They
I can
did.
believe
They
it.
told
I
me
can
not to
believe
They
come to
being who?
people I worked with. I was working at VA at night in the world,
your
in the
former.
world, in World Bank in the daytime, and a lab on K Street. And so I wanted to just have one place to work, and Walter Reed was, had openings in microbiology. Didn't get, but everybody said, don't go to Walter Reed. They demonstrating on the streets up there. Don't go there. It's really bad and so forth. That was what I was told before I came here. But that was also a period of time where, from the 60s up until, pretty much even up until now, that people in certain situations had to demonstrate, and that was the way of doing it at the time. So it wasn't like don't go because they're demonstrating on the street. Just go because there's a job opening and maybe it's a better place for you to work than where you are.
Were the people who were warning you, were they people of color, or were they, white people who
Some white
thought you were a good person
Yeah,
and wouldn't want to be involved in that
some white and some people of color.
for
I mean,
different reasons?
it was just general. They just would say that Walter Reed was a mess. Don't go there right now. I mean, it wasn't just people of color, but it was everybody. And then they didn't want you to leave either. Where you,
Oh, where
I
you
didn't
were.
want me to leave from where I was.
But UBAD was winding down, so they're
Yeah,
by,
yeah.
by 1980s.
Yes,
or
yeah.
had wound down.
The one thing that I remember is that they had a demonstration on Georgia Avenue or something like that, and that was when everybody said, "Don't go there." Don't That was my first real, I guess, understanding of what was happening at Walter Reed. and when they had that demonstration on Georgia Avenue, and everybody said, "You better not go there."
What was the demonstration on Georgia Avenue? I don't
really
remember.
I don't remember, but it was one of the demonstrations.
So it spilled outside the gate.
Yeah, we spilled outside the gate.
That must have been a later one.
I don't know.
Toward the,
It had to be close to 1980 because I came here in 1980, and,
Right.
and UBAD wasn't, so it must have been a real something really big and final, maybe. I don't know.
Virginia, can you think of any other?
There was a little change, I guess, maybe by the time I came, because they had a multicultural committee. So they were trying to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to be included, and that lasted for a short period of time, and then the EEO area, she reminded me of that, had ethnic groups for each ethnic month, and we were able to get different people to come in, like for example, we had Charles Moose to come in, the police chief from the Strangler. We had General Vincent Brooks to come in, Dr. Joyce Elders, Walter Fauntleroy, had an ambassador from Ghana, Ambassador Kobe Kumson. During the organization day, it used to be all European kind of centralized. The one that all the groups, we had what was called the Walter Reed Village, and it had different. Remember that? We had Indian village, Native American village. We had African village. We had Asian Pacific Islander village, and although there's no ethnic group for Europeans, we had a European village.
Yes.
Well, I'll tell you, I organized it so I can talk about it.
When you say village, though, do you mean group?
Yes, we had they had some Native Americans from Virginia set up a teepee, and we had and they did their traditional dances, and they had traditional foods, and then we had the African village. We had Doc Powell, Malcolm X dancers and drummers. They had a stilt dancer and some drummers that do that part too, and we had a Hispanic mariachi band that came and did mariachi, and then taught people how to do salsa and so forth. And we had June Ree. You remember the gentleman, the karate man who used to be on television and says, "Nobody bothers
Bruce
me."
Lee.
No, his
No,
June
not
Lee.
June Lee. June Lee.
Yeah, nobody bothers me. He came and brought his children, some kids, to do karate, and we had a Korean dance troupe, a traditional Korean dance, and then for the European village, we had the Washington
Washington team.
football team, cheerleaders, and Budweiser beer for that, so they could go into the NCO club, and you could get a free thing for Budweiser beer, and the cheerleaders were out and outside. So it was the first. Is this coming apart or something?
Go ahead.
It was the first inclusive organization day ever.
That was one day of sort of these cultural
Cultural
programming.
It was one day, but after from 1980 on, there was someone doing something every month. Like for Black History Month, we had the ambassador from Ghana to come, and we had some Ghanaians to speak, and we had some drummers from Ghana, and Malcolm X dancers and pros. We even wrote a play, coming from Africa to the United States as slaves, and then going through the periods of 20s and so forth and so on. He was one of the narrators. I wrote the stuff.
Do you remember it, Akbar?
Nah.
Don't you remember
I
that,
re-
Virginia?
Yes, I remember. I remember.
The-
Yes,
the-
I remember. I remember. I was only teasing. I was only teasing.
No, that's okay. And then we had some people doing the Charleston, and I mean, it was. I may have some videos still of some of it. Then we had the Federal Women's Program. We had one lady who worked for. She was a Federal Women's Program coordinator. She wrote a play, and we had the play, and we had for Asian Pacific Islander Month. We had the Indians, East Indians, and Filipinos, because frequently when you think of Asian Pacific Islanders, you usually think of China, Japan, Korea. And so I was working with one doctor at AFIP who says, I'm not going to that, I'm Indian, we don't do so brought in Indians, East Indians, and Filipinos. One of our co-workers, John Richardson, was married to a Filipino lady, so we brought them in. They did the little stick thing dance, and then for Native American month we had Navajo Indian princess and Navajo rock band come in. Yeah. I mean,
she's
yeah.
an organizer.
Yeah, you must have some Rolodex.
Well, yeah. But no, I just like people, and I like inclusiveness. And so when I came here, the first Black History Month that I saw was horrendous. I mean, it was horrendous.
What was
Yeah.
it?
It was a book that talked about slavery or something like that. But not even, that's not the issue. The issue was, it was grammatically incorrect. I mean, it was just really written poorly. And one thing I believe in, if you're going to do something, try to do it in the best way that you can. And you don't put a book for everyone who come into this building to read about. The design, I mean, the stands were really good, but the literature was so poor that you wouldn't even want a 2-year-old to read it if they could read it.
So it's like a display and a brochure or a booklet or something like that.
Yeah, it's a booklet. And so I took all the booklets off the shelf, and no, I did.
Disappeared.
Yeah, yes, no, I took them back to the EEO office and told the person who wrote them that it wasn't acceptable, and that well, then
You
kinda,
ended up doing the
the job,
leading the job.
Yeah, well, we had other people too. You know, it wasn't just me. It was a lot of people who were doing it. But I think the change was also a result of maybe what happened with UBAD, and the idea that they were, even though it wasn't easy, it was allowed, so to speak. And also, when we had good people, like we had Dr. Ben Carson here before he
No comment.
when he was, the gifted hands man and the renowned surgeon at Johns Hopkins, who didn't want to have a day job, I mean daytime program, but have a children's program, and did it in the evening. And we did it in the evening, all children's program of Walter Reed employees and their children came in and did the program, and he stayed in autographed books, gifted hands. That was way prior to a certain period of time. Yeah, and so, but when he came, General Blank and the Office of Protocol didn't let us know that the news media was going to be here. He didn't want any news media. So when we found out, or when I found out, I went outside the front door to tell him, we had news. He said, "Oh, don't worry, it happens all the time." And I forgot the lady's name now, but she's it's Channel 4 News. She came and she kind of pushed me out of the way and kind of got general. But that, I mean, that I don't think that was just about me. I think it was just about Dr. Dr. Carson and the fact that he had some patients who had some work done through Walter Reed, and so it was a photo op for for everybody, and so, but
How long did you continue to do these programs? How many years?
from time I came to about 2010. So yeah, I didn't stop, but I didn't always chair everyone, but I chaired most of them at one time or another, and then handed it off and assisted with some of the other programs. Where this gentleman did is a jazz musician. We had him in the auditorium in the dining room. So there were a lot of little things we did throughout the month, and he did a concert in the auditorium. The cafeteria. Yeah. So we got a lot of people involved in doing some of the things, showing off their culture, so to speak.
And was the attendance good?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
It was so good that they had to stop having so many programs.
Yes. Yes.
Can I just say one more thing? I guess it speaks to the, what grew out of the UBAD activism.
Yeah, that's what I said.
In terms of changes. I mean, some of the things that you're describing, Luana. But even before then, as a result, I guess, of an awareness and enlightenment, or whatever you want to call it, that grew out of the UBAD activism was that Walter Reed established an office for Muslim Muslim employees.
That's true.
And
That's true.
this was people who were Muslim by, I guess, I don't know, culture, birth, whatever. And Akbar became the imam for the Muslims who were there. And every Friday held a Jummah service. And Akbar was the leader of the Jummah service for Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know that would have happened had it not been for UBAD activism, raising awareness, but of course the culture was changing too.
Yes.
In the country. I mean, not just here at Walter Reed, but nationwide. People were becoming more enlightened around the value of different cultures and different religions and whatnot.
Yes.
So I don't know how many years you were the imam there, Akbar, but you actually led the religious services.
Right. About 3 years.
3 years.
3 years before I retired. Yes.
Yeah, for the Muslims, and I don't know that would have happened had it not
been for UBAD.
For the activism of UBAD.
Yeah.
So you were the imam up until you retired, right?
Yes.
And no, Virginia is absolutely correct. I think I mentioned that before, that had it not been for UBAD, I don't think that when I came here that it would have been any different, but UBAD had that multicultural thing, and I do remember now he had on Fridays from the lab, he used to do it.
And where were those services?
At the chapel, usually.
So the chapel
Yeah.
became more inclusive or whatever, diverse.
Mm-hmm.
Or what I mean, was it already? What about Jewish? People here. What did they have?
The Jewish. I guess they always had.
They had service. They could have services there. It didn't matter what.
I don't remember them having services, but I don't think they stopped them from having services.
Right.
I know that all the holidays, Jewish holidays, were observed, so to speak. Yeah.